My friends, there comes a moment in every life when love appears not as a gentle whisper but as a great, unsettling mirror. It shows us not only the beauty we wish to see, but also the shadows we have tried so long to outrun. And in that reflection, we often doubt the very thing that was sent to heal us. When someone truly loves you, it is rarely the soft, effortless tale we imagine. Genuine love stirs the depths. It awakens the forgotten chambers of the soul, those places we have sealed away because they contain both our wounds and our potential. Love, real love, calls these chambers into the light. So when you feel yourself retreating, when you fear you are unworthy, when the voice within says let go, it is too much, remember this: the heart does not fear without reason. It fears because something meaningful is at stake. If this person truly loves you, if their presence invites you to grow, if their honesty reflects your truth back to you, if their care remains steady even when your doubts rise like storms, then your task is not to flee, but to understand what within you trembles at such authenticity. Do not give up. Do not surrender to the old patterns that once kept you safe but now keep you small. Do not confuse the discomfort of transformation with the danger of harm. Love that is real does not imprison, it liberates. Though liberation often requires the breaking of inner chains. You may feel overwhelmed at times, you may feel exposed. But consider this: the soul reveals its hidden treasures only when someone approaches with enough warmth for those treasures to bloom. This person sees you, not the mask, not the performance, but the inner figure silently longing for connection. To be seen in this way is both terrifying and sacred. So hold on. Not blindly, not against your own wisdom, but with courage. Lean into the journey that love has placed before you. Let it teach you what your fear tries to conceal. Let it show you who you are capable of becoming. If they truly love you, and you feel the truth of that love echo somewhere within you, then take one more step, and then another. Not because love is a guarantee of ease, but because it is a guarantee of meaning. Do not give up. The soul rarely offers such opportunities twice. Love reveals both our light and our shadow because it touches the deepest layers of the psyche, those strata that usually remain dormant until they are stirred by another human being who matters to us. When we encounter a person whose presence reaches beyond the surface, something ancient begins to shift within us. Their affection does not simply warm us. It illuminates corners of our inner world that we may have long avoided. This is why love can feel both exhilarating and unsettling at the same time. It invites us to see ourselves more fully, not only as the version we proudly display to the world, but also as the vulnerable, conflicted, and incomplete being that moves beneath that outer form. When love comes toward us with genuine warmth, it acts like a light held to a crystal. The crystal reveals its beauty only when light passes through it, scattering colors that were invisible in darkness. Yet the same light also reveals every fracture within the crystal, every imperfection, every fault line that has been there all along. In the same way, authentic love exposes our brilliance, our generosity, our tenderness, our creativity, but also the fractures and wounds that we have learned to conceal. These shadows are not signs that something is wrong with us. They are signs that something is real within us. They show us where we have suffered, where we have been shaped, and where we are still growing. People often imagine that being loved will eliminate their insecurities, but true love has the opposite effect. It makes insecurities visible, sometimes painfully so. When someone cares for us deeply, their affection challenges the parts of us that believe we are unlovable. These parts resist exposure. They whisper that we are not enough, that something must be hidden to preserve the bond. Yet it is precisely through this confrontation that love becomes transformative. The light of another's presence does not create the shadow. It simply makes us aware of it. And awareness is the first step toward integration. To love and be loved requires us to face our inner landscape honestly. Love can show us how kind, patient, or courageous we truly are, because it gives us a reason to reveal these qualities. But it also shows us our impatience, our defensiveness, our tendency to retreat. It shows us where fear still governs us, where old wounds still speak louder than current realities. Without the presence of someone who matters, these aspects might remain dormant, undisturbed, and therefore unchanged. It is only in the heat of emotional connection that these hidden forces rise to the surface. This revelation is not a flaw in love, but one of its greatest functions. For the psyche to grow, it must encounter what it has buried. Love becomes the catalyst that draws these elements upward. The more meaningful the connection, the more profound the unveiling. It is not uncommon to feel overwhelmed by this process, to mistake the surfacing of old wounds for evidence that the relationship itself is flawed. But the intensity we experience is not an indictment of the person who loves us. It is a sign that the encounter is reaching a level of depth where real healing can begin. The light that love brings also reveals our potential, those parts of us that have remained dormant, waiting for a reason to awaken. When someone sees our goodness, our capacity for devotion, our inner worth, we are confronted not only with our flaws, but with the possibility that we are more than our past limitation. This can be just as frightening as facing our shadow. Many people are more intimidated by their own potential than by their shortcomings. It is easier to cling to familiar insecurities than to step into a sense of self that demands courage and responsibility. Love calls us to rise, and rising requires effort. The shadow, however, is not merely the dark side of our personality. It is everything we have not yet accepted about ourselves. Sometimes it contains our anger or jealousy, but it can also contain our talent, our confidence, our ability to assert our needs. These hidden elements emerge when love touches us, because love invites wholeness. It does not want merely a fraction of us. It seeks the totality of who we are. To meet that invitation, we must recognize both the qualities we are proud of and the ones we hope no one notices. Love, then, is not simply an emotional experience but an encounter with our own complexity. When someone truly cares for us, they reflect our inner world back to us with surprising clarity. Their reactions, their affection, their disappointment, their joy, all of it becomes a mirror through which we understand ourselves more deeply. This mirroring can feel uncomfortable. It may trigger defensiveness or denial. But if we stay present, we come to see that the discomfort is not caused by the other person's love, but by our own resistance to what is being revealed. It is tempting, in these moments of exposure, to retreat. Many people withdraw when their shadow surfaces, fearing that their imperfections will drive the other person away. Yet the presence of shadow is not a threat to love. It is the natural terrain through which love must travel if it is to become strong and enduring. Only superficial bonds avoid the shadow. Deep connections inevitably confront it. And when faced with honesty and courage, these encounters strengthen the foundation of the relationship. The light of love also reveals the patterns we have inherited from earlier experiences, childhood wounds, relationship scars, unspoken fears that have shaped our expectations. When love feels genuine, these patterns rise because they sense both danger and opportunity. Danger, because love could expose their irrationality. Opportunity, because love offers a chance to rewrite them. The psyche does not bring these patterns forward to sabotage the connection, but to seek resolution. The person who truly loves us becomes a partner in this inner process, even if neither of us consciously understands it. Thus, love reveals our light and shadow, not to divide us internally, but to bring us closer to wholeness. The more we allow ourselves to be seen gently, gradually the more we integrate. And integrated love that has passed through both light and shadow, becomes unshakable. It no longer depends on illusion, pretense, or idealization. It grows from truth, and truth endures. Love's illumination is not always comforting, but it is always meaningful. It invites the most authentic version of ourselves to emerge, even when that emergence is slow, uneven, or challenging. And in the presence of someone who truly loves us, the revelation of the shadow does not diminish the relationship. It deepens it. Fear arises when something deeply meaningful is at stake, because the psyche instinctively recognizes that certain moments carry the potential to transform us. When we stand before a connection that touches the core of who we are, an ancient alertness awakens. It is not the same fear that comes from danger or threat. It is a subtler, more intimate fear that appears when the heart senses that what lies ahead could reshape the inner landscape. The deeper the significance of the bond, the stronger this instinctive trembling becomes. We fear what matters because it holds the power to alter us. This kind of fear is not irrational, though it often feels confusing. It emerges when we sense that our defenses, those structures we've built over years to protect ourselves, are being gently or forcefully challenged. When someone enters our life with genuine care, with sincerity, with the ability to see us beyond the persona we present, something in us recognizes the gravity of the encounter. We sense that this person could influence us in ways that superficial interactions never could, and meaning always carries risk. The risk of loss, the risk of vulnerability, the risk of being known too deeply. To be truly seen is both a gift and an exposure. The psyche does not fear what is insignificant. We rarely experience profound anxiety when a fleeting encounter is at stake, or when a situation has no bearing on our deeper, emotional layers. Fear becomes pronounced only when the heart perceives that its attachments, old wounds, and inner narratives might be disrupted. The closeness of love, the possibility of trust, the potential to let someone inside, all these call forth a kind of internal vigilance. It is as though an inner guardian steps forward and says, "Are you sure you want to open this door?" Yet that guardian does not come to sabotage us. It comes to ensure that the step we are taking is meaningful, that we are awake to its significance. When something or someone matters, the stakes shift. Suddenly our thoughts change. Our behavior becomes more careful. Our emotions sharpen. We find ourselves imagining possibilities we never considered before, both hopeful and frightening. Hope itself can trigger fear, because hope carries the possibility of disappointment. To hope means we are willing to invest our emotional energy. To hope means we acknowledge that something has value. That value creates both longing and apprehension. When we stand before something meaningful, fear we feel is a recognition of that value. The fear that arises in meaningful love often has roots that extend far into our past. It awakens memories of times we risked ourselves and were hurt, abandoned, misunderstood. Even if those memories are not conscious, the emotional imprint remains. Suddenly, the presence of someone who truly cares causes these old imprints to stir, not because the person in front of us is harmful, but because the psyche is preparing for the possibility of deep emotional engagement. It is as if the heart pulls out its entire history the moment it senses that something new might rewrite that history. This is why we may feel disproportionately afraid. We are not only responding to the present moment, but to echoes of all the times vulnerability felt unsafe. Yet fear is not a sign that the connection is wrong. It is often a sign that the connection is real. If we felt nothing, no hesitation, no trembling, no internal debate, it would mean the bond holds no emotional substance. True attachment awakens fear precisely because it has the potential to touch the layers of ourselves that are tender, unguarded, or still healing. The more meaningful the relationship, the more those layers awaken. Fear marks the threshold of transformation, the point at which the familiar and the possible meet. When someone truly loves us, their presence carries a weight that our psyche cannot ignore. The heart recognizes authenticity. It recognizes consistency, sincerity, and emotional depth. And with recognition comes movement, in a psychological movement that can feel unsettling. Something within us leans forward, wanting to trust, while another part pulls back, wanting to stay safe. The tension between these two forces generates fear, but it is not a destructive fear. It is a fear that signals the beginning of something significant. Fear also arises because love invites reciprocity. The moment we sense that someone's feelings for us are genuine, we become aware of how our actions affect them. This awareness brings responsibility. It is easier to navigate life when no one depends on our truth, our honesty, our presence. But when we feel the weight of someone else's heart in our hands, even lightly, our choices matter more. And meaning always comes with responsibility. The psyche reacts by heightening our alertness, making us more sensitive, more cautious. This sensitivity is often misinterpreted as doubt or danger, but it is simply an indicator of how much the situation means to us. The fear we feel in meaningful love also reveals our desire for connection. If we did not long for closeness, we would not fear its loss. Fear exposes our hopes we may not even have admitted to ourselves. It shows us that we care more deeply than we intended, that we have begun to imagine a future where this person plays a role. The heart is not afraid of emptiness, it is afraid of fullness. Emptiness is familiar, fullness is transformative. Fullness requires courage, openness, and the willingness to risk disappointment for the sake of something beautiful. The fear that rises at the threshold of fullness is a natural consequence of longing. Meaningful love also challenges our internal narratives about who we are. If we have believed that we are unlovable, being loved contradicts that belief. If we have believed that we must always be guarded, a safe connection contradicts that belief. If we have believed that intimacy leads to pain, the experience of care destabilizes that belief. This internal dissonance can produce fear because our familiar sense of self is being reworked. But it is through this dissonance that growth occurs. The fear signals that our old identity is loosening and that a deeper, more authentic self is being invited to emerge. Fear arises most intensely when we stand at the edge of change, and love is one of the greatest catalysts for change. The psyche senses the potential shift long before we fully comprehend it. That instinctive tremor is not a warning to retreat, but an acknowledgement of significance. Something within us recognizes that we are no longer walking through ordinary days. We are encountering a moment that could profoundly influence our path. This fear is not an enemy but a messenger. It tells us that the heart is engaged, that the connection matters, that our inner world is awakening. It tells us that we are not indifferent, that something precious is unfolding, that we are being called toward a deeper form of presence and honesty. It tells us that something within us is ready to grow, even if we feel unprepared. And when something deeply meaningful is at stake, fear is simply the shadow cast by the possibility of love. Genuine love invites inner growth, not retreat, because its very nature is transformative. When we encounter a person who reaches us at a depth we rarely permit others to touch, their presence acts as a catalyst for psychological expansion. They do not simply enter our lives as a new companion. They enter as a mirror, an impulse, a force that quietly challenges the structures we have built to remain safe and unchanged. Retreat is the instinct born from old wounds, from habits of self-preservation, from the fear that closeness will expose something fragile within us. But the invitation carried by true love is not toward hiding, it is toward unfolding. When someone truly loves us, they do not make demands on our soul, yet their affection naturally calls forth parts of us we may have exiled long ago. We begin to notice our capacity for tenderness, for patience, for courage, and this can feel unfamiliar. Genuine love awakens qualities that require us to stretch beyond who we have been. It asks us to participate in our own becoming. Growth often feels risky because it challenges the comfort of old patterns, and so, even in love, the first impulse may be to pull away, to retreat into what is known, to protect the inner core from the intensity of emotional exposure. Yet real love gently urges us to remain present, to lean in rather than flee, to explore the inner landscape with more honesty than we have ever allowed ourselves before. This invitation to growth is not loud or forceful. It is subtle, almost instinctive. We feel it when we notice ourselves wanting to communicate more clearly, to be more sincere, to show more of our inner truth. We feel it when their presence makes us question the habits that have kept us emotionally distant. We feel it when our own reactions, triggered or uncertain, reveal places within us that are still tender and in need of maturity. Genuine love inspires this awareness not through pressure, but through resonance. It reflects the best in us, not as an ideal we must live up to, but as a potential we can grow into. The growth that love stimulates is seldom comfortable. It calls us to examine the parts of ourselves we have neglected, the insecurities that flare when we feel cared for, the fears that rise when someone gets close, the old stories that insist we are safer alone. Retreat can feel easier than confronting these inner dynamics, but retreat maintains the status quo. It freezes the psyche in a familiar position. Love, on the other hand, asks us to evolve. It presents a kind of psychological crossroads where we can choose either the well-worn path of avoidance or the more difficult but rewarding path of inner development. This growth does not require us to become someone else. On the contrary, it urges us to become more ourselves. When someone loves us genuinely, they respond not to our masks, but to our authentic nature. Their affection resonates with the parts of us that have been longing for acknowledgement. To stay in this resonance, we must allow ourselves to expand into the person we are capable of becoming. This expansion means shedding defensive patterns, loosening old fears, and confronting the internal narratives that say we are not worthy or ready. Love does not demand perfection, it demands presence, and presence requires growth. The reason genuine love pushes us toward inner evolution is that it operates on a deeper layer of the psyche than superficial attachment does. Ordinary relationships may touch us lightly, leaving our inner world undisturbed. But true love bypasses the surface and reaches into the archetypal realm, the place where our deepest instincts, wounds, and aspirations reside. When we are connected at this level, retreat feels like a betrayal not only of the relationship but of our own potential. Love awakens something ancient within us, a longing for wholeness, and wholeness can only be approached through growth. To grow in love does not mean to eliminate our fears or flaws. It means to recognize them, to understand their origins, to treat them with compassion rather than judgment. It means to allow another person to witness us not only in strength but in vulnerability. Vulnerability is the soil in which psychological growth occurs. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable in love, some inner barrier softens. We begin to trust not only the other person, but also our own capacity to navigate emotional complexity. Retreat freezes vulnerability. Love asks us to move with it, through it, beyond it. Growth in love also means learning how to hold another person's truth alongside our own. It means expanding our emotional range, developing patience, empathy, and resilience. It means seeing that the relationship is not a fixed entity, but a living process that evolves as we evolve. When love is real, it guides us toward a deeper understanding of responsibility, not the burdensome kind, but the responsibility inherent in caring, listening, communicating, and showing up with authenticity. These are skills of the inner world, and love becomes the arena in which they mature. What love invites us to grow into most profoundly is courage, the courage to remain open despite the instinct to close, to stay present despite the pull of old wounds, to believe that we are capable of giving and receiving care at a depth we once feared. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the willingness to move forward while fear is still alive within us. Genuine love creates the conditions in which courage becomes possible. It shows us that retreat may feel safe, but it also deprives us of the experiences that lead to self-discovery. Love also invites growth by showing us our contradictions. It reveals the place where our words do not match our actions, where our desires conflict with our defenses, where our longing for closeness battles our instinct to protect ourselves. These contradictions are not flaws but entry points for self-understanding. When brought to awareness, they become the raw material of psychological development. Retrenching into withdrawal merely traps us within these contradictions. Growing in love means acknowledging them and working with them consciously. The invitation of genuine love is ultimately an invitation to integrate. It encourages us to bring our hidden parts into the light, to reconcile the divided aspects of our psyche, to become more whole. Wholeness is not achieved through isolation. It is discovered through relationship, through the emotional friction and resonance that arise when two inner worlds meet. Love pushes us to integrate not by force, but by making the cost of fragmentation too high and the rewards of openness too profound. Genuine love asks for growth because growth is the only way to sustain depth. Without inner evolution, the relationship cannot mature. It remains frozen in initial impulses and early fears. But when we choose to grow, the connection deepens into something resilient, something that can withstand the storms of life, something that becomes a source of strength rather than instability. This is why retreat, though tempting, ultimately diminishes both the individual and the bond. Growth, even when difficult, enriches them. The paradox of love is that it feels like a risk precisely because it offers transformation. It asks us to bring forth the self we have kept protected, to trust that we can navigate uncertainty, to believe that intimacy can lead not to loss but to expansion. And in answering this invitation, we discover that the greatest danger is not in opening ourselves, but in holding back from the very experiences that could help us become who we are meant to be. Do not abandon a connection that awakens your true self, because such connections are rare, and their rarity is precisely what makes them meaningful. Most people we meet will only touch the surface of our lives. They may share moments with us, offer companionship, or leave impressions that fade with time. But every so often, someone arrives who opens something deeper within us, something we did not know was waiting, or perhaps something we secretly fear to confront. This awakening is not an accident. It signals that the person before us resonates with an inner truth we have long carried but seldom expressed. To walk away from such a bond is to walk away from the possibility of discovering who we truly are beneath the layers of habit, defense, and history. A connection that awakens the true self feels different from others. It does not simply please the mind or satisfy a longing for comfort. It stirs the inner world with an intensity that is both beautiful and unsettling. We find ourselves thinking in new ways, feeling emotions we once kept buried, confronting old patterns that no longer align with who we are becoming. This discomfort is often misunderstood as danger, when in reality it is the psyche adjusting to growth. The presence of someone who resonates with our deeper self acts like a key turning in a long-locked door. What emerges on the other side may feel unfamiliar, but familiarity is not the measure of truth. Awakening always brings both light and disorientation. When such a person enters our life, the first instinct may be to retreat, Not because the connection is wrong, but because it is significant. The ego resists anything that threatens its established pattern. The heart hesitates before any experience capable of transforming it. We may feel overwhelmed by the intensity of the bond, confused by its depth, or fearful of its implication. But these reactions do not signal that the connection should be abandoned. Rather, they signify that we have encountered something that touches the core. The true self is not a fixed or easily defined identity. It is the most authentic and unguarded part of us, the part that longs for meaning, growth, intimacy, expression. It is the quiet undercurrent beneath our thoughts, the part we reveal only in rare moments of trust. When a connection awakens this part, it means the relationship is operating on a level that bypasses superficial roles and touches the essence of who we are. Such resonance cannot be forced or manufactured. It arises only when two inner worlds recognize each other. To abandon this recognition out of fear is to reject a chance for profound inner evolution. Awakening always brings vulnerability. When someone sees us deeply beyond our persona, beyond our practiced composure, we feel exposed. Yet this exposure is not a threat. It is a pathway. The true self thrives in environments of honesty. It expands when met with understanding, compassion, and mutual depth. A connection that awakens this self encourages us to be more real, to drop masks we no longer need, to live with greater courage. This is why such connections feel both terrifying and liberating. They touch the places within us where truth has been waiting. Walking away from a bond like this often stems from the fear that we are not ready, not enough, not capable of sustaining the depth that has been revealed. But these fears arise from old narratives, not from present reality. The very fact that the connection awakens authenticity means that some part of us is ready for it, even if our defenses have not yet caught up. Growth rarely feels like readiness. It feels like being pulled by something larger than our old limitations. A connection that awakens the true self is also a mirror. It reflects not only who we are, but who we could become. The person who triggers this awakening may not even realize the depth of their impact. Often, they are simply being themselves, authentic, open, sincere, and their authenticity sparks our own. Such mirroring can be confronting. We see in them qualities we have yet to claim within ourselves. Their presence challenges us to rise, to expand, to face the fears that stand between us and our fullest expression. To abandon this mirror is to choose comfort over truth. These bonds are not free of conflict or struggle. In fact, they often bring our inner turmoil to the surface. This is because awakening requires the dismantling of old ways of being. Patterns of avoidance, insecurity, and emotional self-protection become visible, not because the relationship is flawed, but because it is illuminating. Many people mistake this illumination for incompatibility. They interpret the arising of inner conflict as a sign to withdraw, but the conflict is internal, not interpersonal. The connection is simply shining light on the places that need healing. If we retreat when the true self begins to emerge, we reinforce the patterns that have kept us limited. We return to familiar roles, familiar fears, familiar scripts that no longer serve us. The cost of such retreat is not only the loss of the other person, but the loss of a version of ourselves that was trying to come into being. Some opportunities for awakening do not return in the same form. The psyche recognizes the unique rarity of certain relationships, and ignoring that recognition leaves an imprint of regret. To remain in a connection that awakens the true self does not mean to cling or force outcome. It means to stay present, to honor the bond, to remain open to the transformation it offers. It means allowing the relationship to move at its natural pace, neither rushing nor shrinking away. It means acknowledging the fears that arise without letting them dictate our choices. It means choosing sincerity over self-protection, curiosity over avoidance, courage over comfort. Such relationships often endure not because they are easy, but because they are meaningful. They create a space where growth feels alive, where the inner world becomes more spacious, where the self emerges with greater clarity. They challenge us to step into our truth, not by demanding change, but by inspiring it. They encourage us to speak honestly, to feel deeply, to listen inwardly. They become a crucible in which the self is refined. To abandon a connection that awakens your true self is to close the door on a rare encounter with the inner world. It is to silence a truth that has begun to speak. It is to dim a light that was meant to guide you. Such connections are not accidental, they are part of the unfolding of who you are becoming. When someone evokes your authenticity, your vulnerability, your depth, they are touching the essence of your being. To remain present with that awakening is to honor both yourself and the bond that revealed it.